So right here, we're starting the section 8.6. What was 8.5? It was factoring out the GCF, factoring by grouping, and also solving equations using the zero product property. Today, we're going to continue factoring, but we're going to learn this long method of factoring quadratic trinomials when the a value is 1. So let's jump right into the notes. You guys should have these notes right here in front of you. And first of all, I hope you remember what quadratic trinomial means. Quadratic is the highest exponent of 2. Trinomial means there's 3 terms, 1, 2, 3. And a standard form quadratic is this right here. All you got to do is remember that the a value is just a number, the b value is just a number, and the c value is just a number. So let me give you an example of a standard form quadratic trinomial. 5x squared plus 6x plus 7. That's a standard form quadratic trinomial. But in this particular section on this worksheet today and tomorrow, we're only going to be dealing when your a value is equal to 1. So in other words, you're not even going to see a number right here. You're just going to see x squared plus bx plus c. The a value is 1, so you're not even going to see a number. But keep in mind that a, b, and c are just numbers. So today we're going to learn this long way to factor your standard form quadratic trinomial when there's no number in the front, when there's a 1 as your a value. This long method implies these 4 steps, and the 4th step itself is factoring by grouping, which is another 3 steps. So this is definitely long, right? It's a long way. So let's jump right in. It says teacher does it. Please follow along. And you're going to need a lot of space here, so write small. And if you read step 1 up here, it says multiply a times c. So what is a? It's the number out here in front. And what is c? It's the number at the end. You're just going to multiply the numbers. So step 1, right here on the edge of your paper, I would write step 1. And let's actually write down what that step is, a times c. Okay? So what is a? A is 1. What is c? C is negative 24. So you have 1 times negative 24. The answer is what? Negative 24. So put a box around that answer for step 1. And then we move on to step 2. And step 2, if you look at the steps up here, it says, think of the multiples of that number from step 1 that combine to give you the b value. So tip, make a list. So how about this? I would like you to, if you have a highlighter, write down, make a list, or highlight, make a list. If you don't, just go ahead and circle it again or underline it. I don't know, make sure that that's what we're doing. We're going to make a list. A list of what? We're going to make a list of the multiples of that number from step 1. Okay, so we're going to make a list of the multiples of that number from step 1. So check it out. Over here, my answer to step 1 was negative 24. So I want to make a list of the multiples that give me negative 24. So I'm going to start with either 1 times negative 24 or negative 1 times 24. So I'm going to go with negative 1 times 24. That gives me a negative 24. And then how about negative 2? Negative 2 times what gives me 24? Negative 24. 12. Okay. So we're going to put negative 2 times 12. How about negative 3? Negative 3 times 8 gives me negative 24. Now, if you're struggling with multiplication, that is totally fine. All you got to do is get a calculator, and on your calculator, say 24 divided by 3, and it'll give you the 8 that you need right here. So negative 3 times 8. How about negative 4? Negative 4 times something give you 24? Negative 24? 6. How about negative 5? Will negative 5 times something? No. Okay, and not only that, if you go to negative 6, you're already going to get back to the 6 and the 4. So this is all the possible combos right here. So the negative 5, it didn't work. Now, if we go back and reread step 2, it says, think of the multiples, make a list, we already did that combine to give you the b value. So you want to see which pair of numbers not multiply to give you the b value, but combine to give you the b value. So right here you have 24 and negative 1. If you combine that, that'll give you a 23. This is not a plus 23x. So you are not going to pick those first 2 numbers. Does that make sense? It's the last one. Okay. If we go to the next one, negative 2 and 12, if you combine those, you get 10, positive 10. And that's not a positive 10x, so you're not going to use the next pair of numbers. You go to this next one, 8 and negative 3. When you combine those, you get a 5. That's not a plus 5x, so you're not going to use those. if you go to -4 and 6, combine those, you'll get a +2. But this is not a +2, it's a -2. So you have the right number, just the wrong sign, which means you have the right numbers here, just the wrong signs. So you got to change both of the signs. Very important. You got to change that to a +4 and change that to a -6. And now this is the correct pair of numbers that you want for step 2. And now we can move on to step 3. What is step 3? It says rewrite your B as those two numbers. And you know what? It probably should say your middle term or your BX term. You could say BX, right? So you want to rewrite your middle term, your BX term, you want to rewrite it as the two numbers that you just found in step 2. And thus changing your trinomial to a polynomial. So what is step 3 really about? It's really about changing your trinomial to a 4-term polynomial. How do you do that? By changing your BX term to the two numbers that you found in the previous step. So check it out. This trinomial, 1, 2, 3, I want to make it a 4-term polynomial. How? By replacing the BX term, the middle term, that -2x. I want to change that -2x to these two numbers with x's. Okay? So here is my whole thing written out, x squared, but instead of -2x, I'm going to put +4x minus 6x. So here it goes, and then a -24 at the very end. X squared, let me write that down. Here's my third step, x squared, but instead of the -2x in the middle, I'm going to rewrite it as +4x minus 6x. And then at the very end, the -24, that's right there at the very end. Okay? Now, that makes total sense because if I actually added 4x, take away 6x, it would give me the middle term, -2x. So all I did was change the trinomial, 1, 2, 3, into a polynomial, 1, 2, 3, 4. Question is, why the heck would I want to change 3 terms to 4 terms? Because we know how to factor by grouping, which is with 4 terms, which means that at this point, we could factor by grouping. And that's why the fourth step, step 4, is the factor by grouping, which has another 3 steps in itself, right? So let's go do step 4, factoring by grouping. Step 1 is to separate them into 2 groups, x squared plus 4x space minus 6x minus 24. Step 2, factor something out of each group. Look at that first group. What could I pull out of that first group? Exactly, x. What would be left on the inside? X times what gets you back to there? X times what gets you back to there? That's right, x plus 4. Now look at the second group, and what could I pull out of there?
4.
A -6, right? That way, when you pull out a -6, what would you have here and what would you have there? X plus 4. The same identical common binomial in both groups. And now the final step of factoring by grouping is to pull out that common binomial, put it out here in the front. So I'm going to write some red parentheses out here in the front. I'm going to put that common binomial x plus 4 out there, put some exaggerated parentheses, and what's left over if you pull out the x plus 4, the x and the -6, right? The x comes down, and also the -6 comes down.
That's your answer?
And that's your answer, okay? Now, this was a lot of work. And of course, you want to write your answer with the correct size parentheses. So here's my answer, parenthesis x plus 4, parenthesis x minus 6. That's your answer for this one, for this question right here, okay? Remember, factoring is simply a reverse distributive property. So if you did all of these 7 steps and you're like, man, I think I did this wrong, you could always double check it by simply distributing and seeing if it takes you back to the original quadratic trinomial that you had. So let me just show you that over here on the side. Now, you don't have to do this on paper, but x plus 4 times x minus 6. Let me see if it actually gives me this answer when I distribute. And you will see that it does. X times x, x squared. X times -6, -6x. Positive 4 times x, positive 4x. Positive 4 times -6, -24. When you combine the middle 2 terms, you will get a -2x with the x squared in the front with the -24 at the end. And as you can see, it's the same exact quadratic trinomial that we started with. That's how we know that we are double checking, that we're absolutely positive that we did it right, that we have a factored form binomial times binomial of the original. Yay? Okay, so that's a lot. It's a lot of steps. I just did that very first time. If you kind of get it, that's good. If you're asleep, that's bad. So wake up, pay attention, all right? Now, the crazy part is tomorrow, I'm gonna show you a shortcut and you're gonna hate it. You're gonna be like, why the heck did he show us the long method if we could have done the shortcut? Well, the reason why I'm showing you the long method is because when we get to way harder problems, you're gonna have to use the long method and you'll already be ready for it, okay? So this technically is as hard as it gets, right? If you just pay attention, it becomes easier, and it becomes easier with every question that you do. So right here it says with a partner. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna ask you guys to help me, all right? So how about you tell me what step one is? What is my first step? A times C. So everybody write down step one, A times C. Now, even if you already know that step one is A times C, go ahead and write it. Step one, A times C. And you already know that A is 1 and C is 36. So 1 times 36 is 36. There's our first answer for step one. Step two, even though you could read it and you already understand it, I want you to write it down. Make a list of the multiples, right? Make a list of multiples. Of what? Of the answer we got for step one, the 36, right? And how do we make this list? Again, it's like counting. Start with the number 1. 1 times what gives you 36? Yeah, 36. How about 2 times what gives you 36? 18, right? 2 times 18 is 36. Now, again, if you're struggling, all you got to do is get a calculator, type in 36 divided by 2, and it'll give you the 18 that you need, right? How about 3 times something give you 36? 3 times 12 gives you 36. And if you're struggling, just get a calculator. 36 divided by 3, it'll give you 12, right? If you're struggling, go ahead and with the calculator, go 36 divided by 4, it'll give you 9, because 4 times 9 is 36. How about 5? 5 times something give you 36? No. How about 6? 6 times something give you 36? Yeah, 6 times 6 gives you 36. And that's it. If you kept going, 7's not going to work, 8's not going to work. And if you get to 9, you get back to the 4 times 9, right? So these are all the possible combos of multiplying numbers together to give you that answer from step 136. Now, which of these pair of numbers, when I combine them, not multiplying anymore, this was multiplying, but when I combine them, when I add them, will give me the middle term, negative 13. Now, right here, 1 and 36, that'll give me 37. If this said plus 37x, I would circle these two numbers. But it doesn't say plus 37x. It says minus 13x. So this and this gives me 37, not negative 13. So I'm not going to work that. How about 2 plus 18 is 20? It's not negative 13. How about 3 and 12? That's 15. That's not negative 13. How about 4 and 9? That's 13, but we want a negative 13. So we have the right numbers, we just have the wrong signs. So you have to change both of the signs, all right? So make that a negative 4 and a negative 9. Then you'll have the right pair of numbers that you want for step 2. Once again, step 3 is to do what? To change your trinomial to a polynomial. 4 terms. You want to change your 3 terms to 4 terms. And how do we do that? You go to your middle term, bx. It doesn't have to be x. It might be a different variable. But whatever that middle term is, you're going to replace it with the 2 numbers from step 2 with those same variables. So right here, we have a negative 4 and a negative 9. So I need to replace this middle value, negative 13x, with a negative 4x and a minus 9x. So I'm going to rewrite this thing, but instead of x squared minus 13x plus 36, I'm going to say x squared minus 4x minus 9x plus 36. So here goes. Changing your trinomial to a polynomial, x squared, instead of minus 13x, I want to write minus 4x minus 9x. Minus 4x minus 9x. And then at the very end, the plus 36. Plus 36. And why would we want to change a trinomial into a polynomial? Because we're going to be able to factor by grouping. So let's do exactly that. Let's separate the first 2 terms, x squared minus 4x, separated from the minus 9x plus 36. And if we factor something out of the first group, what could I pull out? What could I pull out of here? An x, a single x. What would be left on the inside? That'd be an x minus 4, right? And what could I pull out of the second group? What's better than pulling out a 9? Negative 9, right? Negative 9 is better. So if you pull out a negative 9, you will get that identical binomial x minus 4. And you need it to be common to be able to pull it out. So step 3 on factoring by grouping is to pull out that common binomial from the whole thing. So if I pull out the x minus 4s from both of those, I would put that x minus 4 out here in the front. And what would be left? You would have the x and the minus 9 that just come down. That's what's left, x minus 9. And there's your factored form answer, x minus 4 times x minus 9, okay? It's a lot of steps. I apologize, look at all those steps. But if you were to distribute right here, it will give you the original quadratic trinomial. If you distribute and combine like terms, it'll give you the original. That's how to double check and see if you did it right. Okay, so what I would like to do right now is have you guys try this one right here on a pause it, and then I'll explain it. But before I let you try it, I want you to go through and write down step 1, A times C, and then get an answer, put it in a box right here. Step 2, we're going to say list of multiples. Make a list of multiples of that number, whatever you got right there, okay? Start with like negative 1 times something to give you negative 32. And negative 2, negative 3, and so on and so on. And then step 3 would be to change your trinomial to a 4-term polynomial so you could factor by grouping. All right, I've explained too much. I want to pause right there. You guys work on it, then I'll come back and explain this right now. So let's actually explain this. A times C. Well, obviously A is 1 times C is negative 32. 1 times negative 32 is negative 32. So now you need to make a list of the multiples of negative 32. Now, you don't have to use negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. If you wanted to, you could have just said, I'm just going to go with positive 1, positive 2, and positive 3, right? You could go with positives. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to go with positives this time because on the last one, I did negatives. So 1 times what gets me a negative 32? 1 times negative 32 would get me the negative 32. 2 times what gets me a negative 32? Negative 16. Now, again, if you don't know, all you got to do is go 32 divided by 2, and it'll give you 16. Just make sure you put a negative on it. 3 times what gets you negative 32? It doesn't work. If you tried it on the calculator, it'd be a decimal or a fraction. Then you move on to 4. 4 times something give you a negative 32. 4 times negative 8 will give you a negative 32. 5 times something? Nope. 6 times something? Nope. 7 times something? Nope. 8 times something? You're already back to 4 times 8. So there's only 3 possible combos that will multiply together to give you negative 32. And what you want to do is see which of these pairs of numbers, when you combine them, gives you the middle value, negative 4. And which would that be? 4 times negative 8, right? If you add these guys, it'll give you a negative 31. If you add these guys, it'll give you a negative 14. That's not a negative 14. If you add these guys, it'll give you a negative 4, and that is a negative 4. So you don't have to change any signs. These are the pair of numbers that you want for step 2. And now you can move on to step 3. And step 3 is changing your trinomial, 1, 2, 3 terms, into a polynomial, 4 terms. How do you do that? You rewrite your middle term, your bx term, your negative 4x. You're going to rewrite that as a positive 4x and a minus 8x. So you're going to start writing it x squared, but instead of the minus 4x, you're going to write positive 4x and minus 8x. So we're going to do that, plus 4x minus 8x. And of course, we still have the minus 32 at the very end, minus 32. And as you could see, the middle terms, it's really that same answer. If I actually added positive 4 with the minus 8, it'll give me the negative 4x that's in the middle. So why the heck would I want to change it from a trinomial to a polynomial to be able to factor by grouping? And that's what we're doing next. So let's factor by grouping. Step 1, separate it into 2 groups. Step 2, factor something out of each group. What could I pull out of this first group? An x. What would be left over on the inside? X plus 4. What could I pull out of the second group? A negative 8. Good job. What would be left over on the inside? X plus 4 again. And now that you have the common binomial x plus 4 and x plus 4, you could pull them out. So I usually do exaggerated parentheses, and when I pull out that common binomial, I keep them in those red parentheses. I keep writing that binomial with the same blue ink. So these two got pulled out. That means that the x comes down, and also this minus 8 comes down. And that's what's left over on the inside. So your final correct size factored form would be x plus 4 times x minus 8. And if you're not too sure about this, you could always distribute x times negative 8, 4 times x, 4 times negative 8, combine the like terms in the middle, and it should give you the original quadratic trinomial that we started with. So again, I want to show you a shortcut tomorrow. Flip the paper over. I want you to use this long method on all 5 questions here. Okay, so we have the rest of the class to do these 5 questions. You should be able to do it. However, I do want you to rewrite it in your notebook. You see, there's not much space to do this first one right here. You don't have enough space to do all 7 steps. So please make sure that you copy these down, each one of them in your notebook, and complete them 1 through 5. And then tomorrow, I'll show you a shortcut, and it'll be way easier. But you got to learn this long method for future complicated problems.